supply management idea become more and more accepted.
Good afternoon, good evening, China, good morning, Americas, good day, Europe. Thanks very much for being with us today. This is the 30th anniversary of EIPM. I'm very proud to be with you, and thanks very much to be with us for this 30th anniversary. During 30 years, EIPM has been the paramount of, in terms of education, in terms of thinking, in terms of doing learnings, doing tools. During 30 years, we have been working with you, and for 24 years, we have been working with you for the conference. 30 years anniversary with an MBA, with executive diploma, with certification. For 30 years, we have been with you companies and also making research. So it's a pleasure to start this anniversary with you during this conference. And this conference is the 24th one. As you know, every year the conference is a lot of discussion, a lot of coffee break, a lot of champagne, a lot of fun also. And the conference, you know this conference about, we had the chance to have great speakers in a nice, fun way, but at the same time, very professional. This year, you understand that we can't do that, and it's a pity, but it's a pity because we're not going to meet you face to face. We're not going to get this champagne. We're not going to get this coffee. We're not going to get fun together, but we're much more. This year, we are over 1,000 people coming from all around the world. Why we were just European people. So the world is shrinking. We have much more people at the same time, but we're not going to discuss together face to face. In another end, we're going to get exactly the same professionalism. We're going to get the same type of people, get the same type of speakers, 12 speakers. And the very nice point is this year, you know, the topic is about toward fifth generation. Toward fifth generation is because it's about the books we just wrote, which is published in Amazon these days. You know, we are facing a big crisis. We are facing a very difficult time. We are facing a very challenging period. But at the same time, we get a lot of opportunity. It's very challenging for us because purchasing, procurement, sourcing can become even greater. So we have great opportunities for us, everybody, and also for the organization. So just what I was willing to tell you, just to conclude this introduction, is yesterday we have been working on tackling risks and also lowering financial break-even points with great speakers. And today we're going to cover two more points, which is revisiting supply chain footprint and investing in new technologies. I'm sure you're going to get fun. I'm sure you're going to love what you're going to hear. I know some of these ideas. We're not together. You're on YouTube. You're on different channels around the world. And it's a pleasure whenever you go from through Archon and Geneva to come on our campus. So thanks very much. You're more than welcome again. Thanks very much for being with us. I'm just going to leave you for some minutes and meet you back in another room for discussing with you. Hey, thanks very much to be here, just running from the other room. I'm very pleased, very welcome for these second days. Welcome the word. I'm not going to go back to all the welcome. As I just said some minutes ago, we're welcoming here you for the second days. And it's just great. So we got some information about what was the topics, what were the topics of yesterday. I'm going to go back a bit on the 4 topics we're covering during these 2 days. What's quite interesting in this in these topics is the fact that the 4 topics are not at all related, are not at all purchasing topics. They are related to purchasing and procurement. And this proves if you go to risk, if you go to innovation, if you go to supply chain and innovation, as I say, these 4 topics are not pure purchasing procurement. And these things, but first, purchasing procurement is to support the business because all these topics are business oriented. So first, the first point is purchasing is to support the business. And we have to think about that. The second point is we say that purchasing procurement is influencing the business. And this also is very important. And the last point is we say purchasing procurement is part of the business. So the first point we have to think about these topics is the topics are not, don't expect to, we're not going to speak only about procurement purchasing. We're going to speak about the elements of purchasing which are going to influence the business. So this is the first very important element. The second point I would like to insist on is these topics are related to a turbulent pre-COVID period, such as all the new technologies, the political crisis, erratic raw materials changes, and so on and so forth. So these turbulences, which were existing before the COVID, has been accelerating during the COVID and after the COVID. So the very important point I would like to insist on now is about the turbulence. And we are in the turbulent world. We know that. We need to be agile, but turbulence means always a notion of time acceleration, time deceleration. And this is what we would like to insist also on, the elements of time, the time frame, the speed, the pace. And we want to focus and to highlight these elements of time. And this is one point we have been insisting on the fifth generation purchasing, a newly booked from EIPM and Dr. Hervé Legendre, When Pace Meets Power. And you understand why the title of this conference, because it's kind of really linked to all these notions of time and turbulence. And you find that in the book. What I want also to say is some of you have been attending this conference yesterday, and I want to thank them. Welcome to the newcomers. And we're going to not to speak about tackling risks and lowering break-even point for the ones who did not get the chance to be yesterday. You still can go back on YouTube when we're going to be published by beginning of the week. Today we're going to cover two new topics, as I said before: revisiting the supply chain and investing in new technologies. For each of these topics, as yesterday, we're going to have 3 speakers first, and then we're going to have a roundtable, a discussion with one moderator. Each of this session on investing in new technology and the session on revisiting supply chain is about 1 hour and a half. And in between, we're going to have 10-minute breaks. So I hope you are fine. We're just going to jump in. I'm going to just take this, as you were traveling, before you were traveling long time, so you were take this, an EIPM one is much better. So you take your time. Now we're going to jump in the first topic, which is about revisiting supply chain. This point is quite important. It's, since some years, everybody was speaking about, and we understood that the competition were frequently more in between the supply chain, but just in between the business themselves. So this was kind of given, and given before the COVID. COVID crisis has been showing that in this global world and this global crisis, supply chain competition seems to be linked and associated to the shorter supply chain and to the less risky supply chain, much more than to any other more sophisticated and complex approach. So this is one point. And based on the fact, based on this fact, saying that we have to shorten the supply chain to take the safer supply chain, it's quite interesting to say what's the role of purchasing, what's the role of procurement in. We have been working on supply chain, but now we have to change our mindset about the supply chain itself. So for this first topic, I'm very pleased to welcome the 3 speakers who are Matteo Kalschmidt from the University of Bergamo, is head of department. François Bacalou is CPO and director in Suez, and Dominique Lebigot, who is from Moët Hennessy and is CPO. The panel discussion will be moderated by Christophe Durcourt, who is a partner in Argo & Co. I'm just taking that because I'm quite relaxed now. So to start this first topic I'm going to welcome, and I'm very pleased to welcome Matteo Kalschmidt. Ciao, Matteo. Matteo, as you guess, is an Italian professor from the University of Bergamo. He has been working with us collaborating with us for 6 years, more or less, and working mainly on different topics of the associated to supply chain. Matteo, the floor is yours.
What do we mean by reshoring first?
Well, thank you, Ray. It's a pleasure to be here. Well, reshoring is typically defined as corporate decisions that companies take regarding the home country's partial or total relocation of their production, typically to serve local or regional or global demands. So typically reshoring is something that happens after companies decided to offshore part of their activities in other countries, often for looking for lower manufacturing costs, for example, or to access specific resources. But for some reasons, companies then decide that they want to move back activities, typically back to their home country, or to have a strong relocation of that activity. Reshoring is quite not really a new phenomenon. It started happening significantly in the last 10 years at least, but we have seen quite a growth in the number of cases of companies doing this process. Sometimes we refer to reshoring as backshoring, meaning that they typically shore back home. Sometimes they refer just to nearshoring, meaning that you just take things closer and not really in your home country. But all these elements are typically referred to what we call reshoring of manufacturing activities.
Thanks a lot, Matteo. I understood that some studies have been initiated in Europe in order to understand better the reshoring decisions. Could you give us some understanding about these studies?
Yes, when the phenomenon of reshoring became wider and wider, emerged very clearly that there were some issues in understanding really the phenomenon. The first reason was that there is no official data collection about reshoring, meaning that there are no institutional bodies tracking this phenomenon systematically. So there are no statistics, let's say, at least officially, in Europe at least. Also, it's difficult to track this phenomenon because companies sometimes don't like to share a lot of information about this kind of process because they think it's a strategic decision, so they want to keep it for themselves. And sometimes I think that they believe that it may be perceived as a managerial mistake, meaning, oh, I offshored, I made a bad decision, and then I'm coming back. But there are several projects going on concerning this phenomenon. I'd like to maybe mention some of the most known one. For example, there is a project called Makers Rise, which is an EU project that has different research streams related to manufacturing, and there is one specific on reshoring based on a multinational group looking at what is happening in Europe. There are a couple of other interesting reshoring projects taking part in the northern part of Europe, mainly in Sweden, Denmark, and Finland, looking at what companies there are doing. Another interesting project is the European Manufacturing Survey, which is again a EU project that has mapped the decisions in manufacturing of several thousands of European companies, and they have a specific focus also on reshoring. Also, the European Reshoring Monitor is an interesting initiative. It's an observatory on Europe. Very interesting because they have been working mainly using news data collection, so collecting news coming from any source possible, and that's an interesting way to collect this data. So let's say that there are some projects going on, very well structured and developed, trying to make a little bit understanding of what the phenomenon is taking place.
Okay, thank you. So maybe going to the core questions, what really motivates company to reshore, relocate some of their activities?
Well, actually, this, I guess, it's probably the key question. So it's the key question for companies that some would like to understand why they should do it. It is a key question also for those that look and research this topic. Typically, there are three main strategic orientations that companies refer to when they want to reshore. The first one is what we call market seeking. So sometimes companies decide to reshore because the market requires them to do that, because they need to get closer to their market, or the market somehow asks them to do that. We can encompass here phenomena like the made-in effect, for example, or the specific access to the market, or some perception by the market that making and manufacturing abroad is not a matter, maybe an issue of quality, or maybe an issue of sustainability, for example. Other companies do this because they are more efficiency seeking. Several companies discover that when they offshore, typically looking for efficiency in terms of cost. Indeed, some costs reduce, but many other costs tend to increase. For example, logistic costs, control costs, quality costs. And so some companies decided to reshore because if you do that properly, costs can be somehow saved. You can optimize your logistics activities. So these companies tend to look for efficiency from this perspective. A third typical orientation is what we call resource seeking. So companies that try to restore because they need to have access to specific resources that they have difficulties in finding in the location where they are. This is probably the more challenging of the strategic orientations among these three, because typically this is a problem that many companies face when they move for specific resources, but they don't get access easily to other complementary resources that they need. This is, for example, an interesting area where we discuss about the concept of reshoring readiness, so being ready to reshore. Obviously, a key issue is related to the management of the trade-offs among the different drivers, because you reshore, for example, to get access to specific competences. On the other side, you lose maybe in benefit of lower costs. So you have to renounce a little bit the positive effects in terms of cost in order to get access to something else. Or again, you may have, by reshoring, a reduction in logistics costs or in the complexity and the risk of your supply chain. But on the other side, you lose the access to a foreign market, which was potentially interesting. Today, I would say that most of the discussion is around the why companies do this, mainly by looking also at elements like innovation and sustainability, and in particular, how these two topics interplay with efficiency. So to which extent companies can still be competitive on the market, but try to use reshoring as an innovation tool and a sustainability perspective. I would say that today the real issue is not only understanding whether you should do it or not, but also how to do it if you decide to do that thing. I would say that the key question that the companies address from this point of view is whether to do the right thing, so whether to reshore or not, so which is the right thing to do. But the second problem is that when you have taken this decision, the real problem is do that thing right. So do that thing in a proper way. And our research shows that, oddly enough, it's more important to do that thing right rather than take the strategic decision properly. The big challenge is take a decision that you think, that you believe is the right one, and then do it well. Hopefully this is going to solve your problems, or at least make you a little bit more competitive.
Thank you. And what do you see as the role for procurement here? Any difference with going to a new country?
Well, actually, most of the discussion about reshoring is about reshoring of manufacturing. However, I would say that attention is given also to reshoring of procurement, meaning revising the procurement strategy, typically in favor to local procurement. I would say that the key role in procurement, first of all, is linking the reshoring decision to managing a local versus global supply network, meaning that when you move things closer to your country or your home country, then you still need to manage supply, and maybe you need to revise also your supply strategy. And often the two things cannot be considered as separate decisions. Also, it's fundamental that procurement is involved in evaluating the impact of the supply network on the supply network of a reshoring decision. Let's say that I would say that today we indeed need to talk about transnational supply networks, not really international, national, but transnational is the key point. And also I would suggest that procurement is fundamental in evaluating the reshoring readiness. So the availability of competences and the availability of complementary resources and the complexity in getting access to this. Some cases that we have been studying showed that some reshoring decisions failed because procurement was somehow involved not in the right moment, considering that essentially procurement was not going to be a problem. And most of the cases, then the real issue was then finding the right suppliers locally, because maybe the supply that you had, the global operator, was not really interesting or not available to support you in this operation. As a matter of fact, my perception is that sometimes the wrong idea is reshoring is a top-down strategic decision, and it involves mainly manufacturing, when that's not true. That's indeed also a procurement element, a procurement decision. In particular, the evaluation, for example, of the total cost of ownership of such a decision is something that procurement is really fundamental with. There are a couple of interesting initiatives that, for example, provide total cost of ownership tools really to evaluate these decisions, and it's very evident from these applications that procurement is something that
Grazie mille, Matteo. Thanks very much, Matteo. Very interesting discussion and presentation. You're working on research. All these ideas about supplier network were just great, and I think we have a lot of questions about these topics. So thanks. We're going to jump in the second presentation for this topic of relocalization or revisiting the supply chain. I'm going to call for the second speaker with François Bacalou. Welcome, François. Bienvenue, François. François is a CPO indirect for Suez Group Global, worldwide. Before taking this position, he was a CPO for Suez Water Technical System in the States. During this different position, he has been implementing these elements of reshoring and understanding how we can shorten or relocate these different suppliers and using this different supplier network and relocating this supply chain around the world. So I'm very pleased to welcome you.
First question I have for you is, within your company, what are the factors that influence the location of your suppliers?
Thank you, Hervé. So if we go back a little bit, I mean, the main driver was, of course, price. And we have to look, then we move into total cost, but let's face it, the main driver was price. Beside price, we have now a key driver, which is health and safety. We need to make sure that our people are always in a safe environment. Of course, supply risk. Are we able to deliver on time because the lead time are shortening, etc., etc.? Are we able to deliver on time? And more recently, when I say recently, in the past 10 years, we move into other stuff like environment and social. The CSR became more and more important. So if we go back, price first, and then many other elements that help us to organize the transition.
Thank you. You're in an industry, the water, sanitation, where your customers are local authorities. Is this something, that's impacting, that you take into account in your supplier selection and localization?
Of course. And this is part of the relationship we want to develop with our customer, because, of course, we deliver a service for sure, but there is more to it. I mean, how can we work with a local authority about their agenda, a much larger agenda in terms of local employment, environmental management, etc., etc. So, of course, our supplier, we need to deliver the service, but we need to think about, can we do more than that? Can we differentiate ourselves and go beyond what was, I would say, the standard of our industry?
Thank you. Could you give us examples where you've been thinking differently and where you've been rethinking in some ways your supply chain footprint and the localization of your supplier?
Yeah, I mean, the example that really, was a succession of innovation, new ideas, new way of looking at the business. Definitely. So like you said, we manage distribution network for clean water. And so we have a lot of components. So I will mention the meters that everybody knows, but there are a lot of connections, a lot of pipes, a lot of water equipment that, this industry has been there for more than a century. And all this material initially were iron cast, brass, any type of metal type of material. So what was done initially is that, because driven by cost reduction, etc., what we did, we kept the same design and went from France to Eastern Europe, a little bit farther east. We ended up in China and in other places with just one focus, which was cost reduction. Okay, so then happened stuff like we discussed before. Our customers were interested in terms of where do you source from, why, etc., and we tried to look at it another way. So what we did, because of course, price is a given, right? So that was not an option. So what we decided to do, it took some time, but what we decided to do was to work with local supplier in France, and we have a couple of very good examples where, again, we did redesign to cost with these people. We said, okay, this is a function, this is the target price, this is what we need to do, can we work together? And we spent time, we co-invested with a supplier in terms of redesigning a product. So from a standard, let's say, iron cast material, we move into thermoplastic stuff, composite material, and that was doing exactly the same function. So in terms of functionality, that was just about the same. We went through millions of tests, etc., etc. It was not obvious because, again, when you change materials, there are a lot of implications in this business. So what we did, we work with our supplier, and we work with our supplier, which is a supplier of raw material. And we did a lot of research, because when we talk about composite or composite material, that says a lot. What is a composite? So we need to meet the specification. We need, if we can, to reuse existing material, and that's what we did. Now we use a portion of our material come from the automotive industry, recycle material. So we work with a supplier to come up with an alternative design that, again, will do the same job at the same price. And I have to say, maybe we have even improved on that with many other things. So the risk, supply risk went away. I mean, we have suppliers now that are located pretty close to us. When we talk about environment, without saying, no more transportation. And of course, the material, the environmental impact of recyclable plastic versus iron cast, nothing to say about that. So, and then if we move into the CSR aspect of things, that was as well very, very important and very well appreciated by our customer, because of course we relocated a very large number of jobs in France. So not just our supplier, but like we say, all their subcontractors, supplier, because now our supplier raw material is in France or very close in Europe. So there has been, starting with one concept, we have managed to, I will say, tick all the boxes. So now we don't only tick box on pricing, we tick box on environment, on CSR, on risk, and many others.
Excellent. And I think you've got some other cases where you've been even looking at some of your raw materials, phosphates that you've been using inside the company as well, when you've been rethinking about your approach.
So the example I just given you was more looking at things from a French perspective, because that was more for the French operation. The second example I would like to share is a more global one. One of our company is supplying membranes and various chemicals for the industry. And we have operations all over the globe. Okay, so we have operation in America, we have operation in Europe, in Middle East, in Asia, in Australia, everywhere. What we did initially, again, driven by cost, we all went to China. So that means every single region were dependent on a couple, 3 or 4 suppliers, all located in the same region. So again, same thing, Chinese regulation has changed, more pressure on manufacturer. So some of them just closed down, and that was a very big impact on the chemical industry. Some closed down, etc., etc. So that prompted a different way to look at things. So this is more getting supplier base aligned with our manufacturing base. So I'm not just talking about one country now, I'm talking about having partners that can supply us in every single region. So now we went with a couple of partners who had operation or warehousing in the different regions. So before that, we were sourcing maybe 90% from China. Now we are 20% China, 20% Europe, 20% Latin America, etc., etc. So altogether, we can support our operation from many different places. And I can give you a very recent example. When the COVID started in China, as everybody knows. So our operation in China were kind of struggling to find raw material in China. So what we did, we supplied from the other region of the globe our Chinese operation. And then as COVID was evolving and being more and more present in the other region, we did the other way around. And that was then the Chinese supplier that could support us in the different region. So we said, looking at it on a holistic way, so I think reshoring makes sense when you are in one country, but just with the second example, it makes as well a lot of sense, even when you are global. We need really to think about what do we need to do with our supplier base in order to really support more strategically our operations.
Thank you. we've heard that sometimes the reshoring is just the, you know, the outcome from, let's say, a failed outsourcing or an offshoring that wasn't working very well. Do you have any actions that try to, you know, somehow from the start anticipate, you know, the avoiding to have some of these offshoring, starting from the early design phase, you know, trying to avoid this type of things to happen with new product, new infrastructure components, things like that now?
I guess a couple of examples I've given you were about decision made 10, 15, 20, 30 years ago, when, of course, the way of looking at things was a bit different. Now I have to say, with this network of partners, we look at exactly what you said. We try to anticipate the future because we know, and I can go back to my example on the network components. You know, there is more and more digitization. So now we have meters with a lot of electronics in order to transfer data automatically, etc., etc. We have the same on all the equipment on the network to maintain the network, to give information about flow, etc., etc. So this is an endless story because, again, the decision we made on material, on plastic, by example, help us to be much more efficient in transmitting data, in communication, etc., etc. So back to your question, I think now we are more in a process where differentiation and technology will bring much more value to our industry than just standard cost reduction and offshoring strategies.
Right. So having going through this, you know, this experience and having all these cases that you've been able to gain success with, what are the challenge? What are the solutions? What would be advice for your peers in 2021 who want to go in such a way?
So I always keep in mind two things. The first one is that this is not a sourcing or procurement initiative. That must be a company-wide initiative because in all what I said, of course, we went very fast, but everything starts with salespeople. They need to appreciate what is important for our customers. What do we need to do in terms of sourcing, etc., and understanding what our customer expect, of course, just beyond the standard function. So sales need to be on board. Technical, of course, technology need to be on board because we need to make sure that whatever solution, again, re-engineering takes more time from engineering than from sourcing. So it's really important that what we do now, we get engineering team and supplier together to build what we call a shared roadmap. This is where we want to go in the coming 2 years, 3 years, get these people together. So sales, engineering, and of course, I would say management, because people need to appreciate the benefit we can get from, you know, I mean, we need to drive the change and the change start from the top. So of course, sales and technology are really instrumental, but we need as well the company to drive this change of culture. So that's one. Internally, there is a lot to do in order to communicate the benefit and make sure people understand the benefit of having sourcing close to the strategy of the company. That's one. The second one is changing the relationship with suppliers as well. Because of course, we trying to create new concept, to invent new product. You don't get it right every time, right? You don't get it right first time. So you need to accept, and now we have a budget for that, where we can co-invest, I have said before, or at least trial and errors, work with supplier, try to understand and try to come up with new ideas. So the two things is we need a new way to look at things internally, and that starts from the top. I insist on that. The second one, we need to have some very good partners that trust us and that we accept. And the third one will be we accept to fail, because it doesn't work, again, right first time, every single idea. I've just shared success. We have as well some initiatives that didn't work that well and that we just stopped because they didn't bring what we expected. So this will be the three things I think are important when we get into this journey.
Merci beaucoup, François. Thanks very much, François, for this very rich, deep presentation. You totally right. In the water industry, as in the energy in general, you have to reinvent yourself because the economic model are totally changing. We saw that yesterday, by the way, with Jose Luis, CEO of Nordex Acciona, explaining the new relation you have to develop in the new renewable energy. So this is a new word for you, and it was very interesting with all your example. It was very rich. Thanks again, François. I'm now very pleased to welcome the third presenters, speakers, Dominique Lebigot, who is CEO Moet Hennessy. Another, that's a product you don't put water in, so there's a strange relation between François and Dominique, but liquid, but different liquid. So Dominique is working in Moet Hennessy, CEO. He has been working in different companies before, global companies, from FMCG to steel industry. Today, he's going to present us some specific actions he has been implementing in his company to shorten some different supply chains. And he's going to present us some very interesting examples. So, Dominique, the floor. First question, within your company, what are factors that influence the location or relocation of your suppliers?
Good morning, Bernard. Thank you very much for giving me the chance to share the Moet Hennessy experience. First, what have been the factors for us to define our supplier portfolio? First, we have a global purchasing network with buyers located everywhere in all continents, and we have operations in wineries in all continents where we are making wines and spirits globally. So we have a network of suppliers that have international footprint for some, and from some others that are locally connected with our purchasing network, but very good and strong suppliers. So our criteria and factors for defining and developing our supplier portfolio have been based on making sure that all good suppliers that we have and good partners with whom we work are working with all units. We are being qualified in all our operations worldwide. This has been the first way for us for getting our sourcing getting international. So we have been developing in the past years the international sourcing, and we have been connecting our operations worldwide to work and source overseas from the best suppliers we identify. That's the first point. Second, we keep on adjusting our purchasing strategy to the new purchasing and new business challenges. And one of them, as you know, as everybody knows, is how can we reduce our carbon footprint and how can we make our overall supply chain more agile. So for that, we initiated another program, which is taking all those suppliers that we have identified worldwide and making and giving them incentives to open operations in the regions where they are not. This would prevent them from sending materials overseas, and this would reduce the lead time and reduce the carbon footprint. And that's a program that we call Global Proximity.
Okay, can you say some words about global proximity, because this is the main initiatives for locating your suppliers closer or relocating some of your suppliers or helping suppliers to come closer from your own locations.
Yes,
global proximity, nice words.
This is very much in line with the reshoring initiative that we are discussing today. Global proximity, in fact, it's the next maturity level that we bring to our international sourcing. It has both. It provides both benefits, having the connection with best suppliers in the world and working with the best suppliers wherever their headquarters are, and making sure that we can build proximity close to our operations. That's why we call it global proximity. Few examples. For example, we are buying a lot of packaging material and for our wine and spirit products, and we have been developing the relationship with some of our key and strategic suppliers. For instance, one labels manufacturer who is located in Italy. We have this company has opened a site in Scotland next to our whiskey Glenmorangie operation, and they are now providing and supplying our operations in Edinburgh from a local manufacturing site. We have also created a bridge, and we have developed a very good supplier for rigid boxes, what we call the rigid boxes, the coffret, if you want, a supplier located in Brazil, a very good supplier that have been working with our Brazilian subsidiary for years, and now this supplier has opened a manufacturing site in Champagne, and making sure that we can now provide rigid boxes for our projects in Champagne. We have also developed another relationship and global proximity success story. It's a supplier of wire hoods. I don't know if you know what wire hoods means. These are the smaller steel device that you have on all sparkling bottles, and if you want to open that bottle, you have to take this steel device out and then the cork out. So this is very small steel piece that we have in all our sparkling bottles. We have a very good partner with whom we work in Europe, and this partner has opened 3 manufacturing sites, one in Australia, next to our Australian operations, one in Brazil, and one in Argentina. Again, this shows some examples of suppliers that are following us in our global proximity strategy and are in agreement to open manufacturing sites close to our operations. There are, of course, very good benefits for that, and I can, if you want, I can share that with you. And the reason why this global proximity program works.
Yeah, thanks very much. I would appreciate if you can share some more elements, because it's quite fascinating.
Yeah, well, very good. If we have time, the question that we are facing, all of us, when we are talking about opening manufacturing sites next to our operations, next to our premises, is well, what's the benefit for the suppliers to do that? I mean, they are investing a lot. We don't participate to the investment. They are investing a lot, and what kind of security they can have for opening a new operation next to a customer, and what benefits they have to do that locally. For us at Moët & Cie, it's a bit different. We are manufacturing wines and spirits, and we are very much linked to what we call the appellation d'origine contrôlée, which means we have been manufacturing champagne in Champagne, and we will continue to do that in Champagne for the years to come. The same for cognac, the same for other brands that we are working on and developing worldwide. So the benefit for the suppliers when they are opening a plant, they know first that they have a good partner, a good customer, Moët & Cie, that they can rely on for a minimum of business, and we are helping them, even if we don't participate in the investment. But also it's one way for them to enter the local market, because there are other sparkling producers, sparkling wines and spirits producers locally based. So it's one way for them to enter this market and conquer new customers. So it's clearly a win-win situation. And in addition to that, the benefit for us, first, we reduce the lead time, we secure the supply chain, we make this relationship between the supplier and us more agile and in proximity. And we have been able to do, by doing that, to reduce our carbon footprint by more than 6,000 tons equivalent CO2 per year. So it has a real benefit in terms of avoiding overseas shipments. It has a real benefit in terms of reducing carbon footprint.
In this global proximity approach, what have been your criteria for selecting the suppliers in this program of global proximity? If you have some criteria.
Yeah, you can't do that with all your suppliers. You have to make sure that you can develop a very strong relationship with some key suppliers. Basically, you have to make sure that you are part of the key customer for your suppliers. The suppliers are willing to follow us because we are a strategic customer for them. So first, our factors for selecting those suppliers is, are we acting as a key customer for them or not? And can we raise the awareness and the importance of Moet & Cie in their customer portfolio? So that's the first thing, is to make sure that in our supplier relationship management program, we have a specific program in place where we have identified some suppliers as being partners for us. We know that those suppliers with whom we are working on global proximity initiatives are those partners, are those suppliers that are willing to develop the business with Moet & Cie far beyond sending materials, providing services, and sending invoices. This is also very much linked to what is the strategic purchasing plan of Moet & Cie and our vision in the future of transforming our suppliers into contributors to business and partners with whom we can develop the revenues of the company. This is, for me, what I would say, this is one of the key evolution for the next purchasing age for purchasing, is how can us buyers, how can we become contributor to business? How can we become business acumen? We have this chance of living in a world today which is more and more connected, and tomorrow, with the Internet of Things, with all the market connected, you see the suppliers of our suppliers will be directly in contact with the customers of our customers. And this overall setup that we all have been working for the past 50 years, which says in the company you have suppliers and customers, and of course both worlds are completely disconnected, and we even have structured our organization like all other companies with a sales force and the purchasing department. The fact is, with all the market getting connected, you will see more and more interactions between supplier market and customer market, and at the end of the day, on a business standpoint, you will end up with only one external market. And business opportunities are everywhere and should not only be found in the customer markets, they should also be found in the supplier market. And that's why purchasing has a key strategic role to do in the future, because we are the best, us buyers, to know and to understand our supplier markets. And we will be asked tomorrow, all companies will be asked tomorrow the same question: what do you do as a buyer to help impacting revenues? How can you identify growth and sales opportunities on the suppliers market to help generating revenues in the company? For us at Moet & Cie, it means we are producing and selling bottles of wine and spirit tomorrow, and today already. We have already launched that program that we call supplier activation. Today, we are transforming our suppliers into customers, and that's okay. we are giving them the opportunity to have access to our final finished products at a special discount because they are suppliers. And we also ask them to collaborate with us much beyond the transaction piece of sending products and services, but to have joint initiatives into marketing campaigns, to do marketing campaigns together, to have to exchange information about their knowledge and their market intelligence on their customer market. And this collaboration is going far beyond the traditional buyer-seller collaboration. Global proximity is part of it. It helps it relies on the capacity of a customer and a supplier to work very closely. And if you can reduce the distance, geographical distance, it helps the proximity to be raised. So it goes completely in the sense of our business acumen purchasing vision at Moitensy.
Okay, so on one hand, you say global proximity, trying to get your suppliers closer from your business as you have been doing. On the other hand, say, okay, your suppliers can also be your supporting your sales and supporting your business, and you today you're connecting both.
Yes, absolutely.
And
it doesn't mean that buyers should become vendors. Everybody has his own job. What it means that we should, as buyers, we should leverage our supplier relationship and put our suppliers in contact with our sales force. Everybody does his own job in the organization, but at least we are making sure that the business opportunities now are 360 degrees and not only 180 degrees.
Your business is quite specific, and do you think that what you have been implementing in your business, speaking about global proximity, asking your suppliers to support your business, do you think this is also can be implemented in other sectors, in other business, in other industries?
I say yes. I think it's already the case in some companies. Some companies have already been pushing their suppliers to develop and to open manufacturing sites close to their businesses. We saw that in the past with some successes, but short-term success, because this was mainly in the car industry or the FMCG, whatever. But as long as the customer can ensure that its own operations sites are going to remain in that region, it's a long-term investment that it's worth for the supplier. For sure, everybody will have to go that route. Something new today. The world is changing. The world is changing for different reasons. We have been experiencing in the past 10 years and even more in past 5 years, a very strong awareness of everything which is environment. And on the top of that, the CO2 emission. Today, it's not absolutely the case, but tomorrow, the regulations are going to increase and more companies will be asked to reduce their carbon footprint. Not only by compensating by planting trees in different places, but effectively to have a program in place to reduce their carbon footprint. Global proximity is one very good way for companies not only to build stronger relationship with local suppliers, but also to reduce their carbon footprint. And there is no way back for that. This overall momentum has started, and there is no way back. So yes, I strongly believe that everybody will be putting a lot of emphasis in their strategic purchasing initiatives in the future for that.
Just to conclude, Dominique, any specific final advice for your peers for 2021? You have been giving a lot of advices during these interviews, discussions. Any final advices?
Well, thank you very much for asking a difficult question. I don't think I have any advice to give to anyone. I am personally basing my own understanding of what needs to be done based on my experience, because I had the chance for having experienced the global purchasing organization in many different industries in my career. I would maybe not really an advice, but a question mark that all CPOs should be asking itself in the future. Having suppliers relocating operations next to your premises, next to your manufacturing sites, beyond all advantages I just mentioned in this interview, it also provides sense to driving business in the future. One thing which is different today, and I'm not talking only about COVID. COVID, we all have been working and going through this COVID crisis and this pandemic crisis. We all have suffered from that, but like all crises, it provides also some opportunities for accelerating changes. We saw how far we can move our collaboration, worldwide collaboration, interaction, team interaction, but from physical meetings into virtual Zoom meetings. And you have been doing exactly the same adaptation by doing this digital event today. This has been accelerated by COVID. I think COVID also has raised awareness, political awareness globally. For the first time, for the past 30 years, for the first time in the world, all nations, the entire human population has been facing the same problem at the same time with the same solution. We have been observing in the past years some growing policies for nationalism, for some political movement that are going in the sense of refocusing on itself, putting barriers, raising import taxes, ignoring global instances like World Trade Organization and so on. All those organizations and global instances have been suffering because of lack of credibility, and this has been getting hurted in the past years. This COVID crisis has clearly reminded everyone that we can, in fact, at the end of the day, we all are facing the same issues. We all are living the same planet, and this planet is becoming very small. And it's more important that we all work together, that we raise and create unity between nations than separations between nations and protectionism. So I think this has a merit, the COVID has a merit of maybe making some barriers, some national barriers going down in the next years. And we saw that with Trump and Biden. We saw that. And I strongly believe that we will continue to see this momentum of going back to a global unity, working better in the long term. So the only question mark I will raise and I will share with the CPOs is we all should think about what's different today because of this global pandemic, because of this global technology which is connecting more and more all markets. We should stop thinking about managing suppliers, and we should start thinking about managing ecosystem. A supplier is just one piece as part of an ecosystem. And if you think that way, then you will have to think the ecosystems everywhere where you have operations. Bringing suppliers close to your operations, to your operation manufacturing units, is thinking in terms of ecosystems, in the local ecosystem. So if you keep that in mind, what our strategies should be focusing on exploring and taking advantage of all opportunities that an ecosystem can bring. It's the same that we should stop looking at the piece and starting and looking at the puzzle itself. So I think if you put ourselves in this mindset, I'm sure we'll see all benefits of these global proximity programs and all benefits of business acumen as well.
Thank you very much, Dominique. We meet us in some minutes for the panel discussion. Thanks a lot for all these wonderful insights and comments. Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Dominique. Dominique, CPO, Moet Hennessy, who is part of LVMH group. So thanks very much for this very interesting presentation. This wording, global proximity, I'm sure you got a lot of fans for these two words. Because it's very interesting to have been associated these two words, global and proximity, for shortening the supply chain, what you have been doing in Moët Hennessy. So thanks very much for all your explanation. Thanks very much for all your example. Thanks very much, but reminding that the world is changing, and so we're going to go for discussion. We entering in the roundtable, so I'm just going to wait for Christophe to be with me. Thanks very much, Christophe, to be with me. So Christophe Durqueroy is partner in Argan & Co. And we're going to go directly on the roundtable discussion. So Christophe, the floor is yours. A small jingle for you now. Just
hello everyone, can you hear me well? Yes. So I'm really happy and honored to facilitate today's this roundtable. Thank you again to all of you, Matteo, Dominique, and François, for sharing your views and great experiences on this strategic topic. First, perhaps to start this roundtable, Matteo, I would like you to give us an opportunity to get your reaction to François and Dominique comments. What strikes their views?
Oh, thank you. Well, I found the both videos that we had a chance to see that very inspiring. They gave us great insights. So it's very difficult to summarize them in just a couple of minutes. But I would say that what struck me is that they both focused not on why you should rethink and redesign your supply chain, but on how to make it well. So how to make it really work. So that's definitely was very inspiring, which is definitely what companies should focus on, not on why, but on how to do that. And I think that at least 3 points are great and very inspiring from my perspective. The first one is probably the importance to work with suppliers, with local suppliers. And so the importance of changing the relationships that you have with your suppliers. Still pressure on procurement is on price. Yeah, price is definitely a great one, very important KPI, but also the organizational environment is changing, and that's definitely very inspiring, I think. The second thing I found is the growing attention that both our CPOs gave us to the attention to risk management and agility. That's not too surprised if we think that we are living in the COVID era, but definitely it seems evident that what happened, the COVID effect, was probably mainly an accelerator. So something that accelerated an existing phenomenon. And I think it's something that's I find very, very, very challenging. And probably the last point I would like to draw attention to is the importance of having an holistic view. Procurement, as was designed and presented as the connector between suppliers, sales, functional units. That's really an inspiration, I think. Dominic, for example, introduced the concept of ecosystem, which I think is a powerful metaphor. And I think that is definitely an interesting perspective that should drive the changing paradigm that procurement people should put in.
Thanks, Matteo. Thanks for your view. I would like to take the opportunity of this roundtable perhaps to focus on one point you all highlighted is around the strategy execution of a reshoring approach or the supplier allocation program. You all insisted in that phase, and especially you, François, you discussed a lot around the fact how important it is to develop internally within the company relationships with other departments such as sales or engineering to implement levers such as design to cost, for instance, one of the examples you mentioned. We all know that cross-functional team is worked by company for many years, because it's a very complex topic. Potentially, you can give us some example or some advice what you have experienced within Suez on that kind of cross-functional work, let's say.
Okay, so for that, and I think we need to go just beyond cross-functional activity. I guess what we're talking about now is sharing the same vision, And that's a question I will ask to Dominic, because he presented all this proximity approach from a procurement perspective. I guess my question is it as well a top management perspective? Is it a company strategy, or is it just procurement trying to push this strategy? Because to me, this is, back to your question, this is really the key. Procurement now need to spend more time internally, I will say, than externally. Because this great vision we have about supplier collaboration, supplier being part of our ecosystem, supplier really working with us as partner, need to be shared by everybody within the company. Because if it's just procurement pushing for that, we won't go very far. So I guess to me the key, and again, there is not a toolbox or something magic that's going to make things work, is really spend the time to explain to everybody, and especially top management, how critical it is to look differently at our supplier. It's not another body outside of the company that we need maybe to put pressure on to get, like Matteo said, some cost reduction. It's a real opportunity. These are people who have research and development, we have a commercial strategy, we have a lot of things, and we need to appreciate what these people could do for us, and not just on delivering product, and that has been very well presented, not just delivering product, but brainstorming with us, being part with us, how we are going to differentiate ourselves, position yourself in a different way on the market, not just thanks to what we can do internally, but thanks to the new relationship we will have with suppliers. So that's really why I want to insist, is that need to go beyond procurement. That need to be the next company strategy, is leverage. We are very good at managing human resource. We need to be as good at managing external resource. And that should be everybody's responsibility. And again, like Dominic said, we will stay in our job, no problem, but everybody in the company, when you talk about technology, about sales, about as a contribution to developing this relationship with suppliers. And this is what I think, this is a new way to look at things.
Yeah, I fully agree. If you allow, Christophe, I will build on what François has just mentioned, as well as Matteo. You're absolutely right. That I think we are living at an inflection point today in the history of purchasing, and we are jumping clearly into the next generation purchasing. What I like at purchasing, and to build on what François was just saying, this cannot be only a strategy, isolated strategy by procurement. It has to be shared by the company, by the executive people. What I like in purchasing, if you push back yourself in the past 40 years, purchasing was born in the 80s. And every 10 years, this is the only function that I know. This is the only function which is reinventing itself every 10 years. Every 10 years, the job of purchasing is different. We started with focusing on prices, getting the best price in the market. Then in the 90s, I would say we focused on cost, total cost of acquisitions, and quality and delivery time. So best compromise is productivity. Then we moved into the early 2000s into not only price and cost and productivity, but also innovation. We are expecting purchasing to innovate, to come with innovations, and also in the past 10 years in sustainable initiatives. And how can we contribute to the environment and to managing the risk and ensuring compliance of all our processes and integrity in the system. Today, we are just moving into a new stage, which is another revolution, or maybe overall it's just evolution. But the next revolution is clearly we are jumping into the new dimension, which is making our suppliers becoming active and contributors to generating growth with us. Having some growth initiative with our suppliers, asking our suppliers to help us grow and then to make themselves grow as well with us. So that's business acumen. Vision for me is just another turn into the history of purchasing. But to come back on what you said, it has to be shared and to be and to have, you need to have everybody on board. For that, who are we talking to? I mean, I was also building on what Matteo says in terms of mindset. You have to change the mindset of your customers, your internal customers. You have to change the mindset of your suppliers, and you have to change the mindset of the executive people, and you have to change the mindset of the buyers. The way we do that, we decided that the whole relationship with supplier has to be considered differently. We are going to change the way suppliers are working with us, and we are going, more importantly, to change the suppliers are working between themselves. I take one by one. Suppliers will have an active role in helping us building revenues, trying to open new doors and new markets and new growth opportunities with us, because they are very much in a very good position to help us on that. And they are much more, they are very much willing to do that, because suppliers are willing to expand their relationship beyond purchasing. If they can be in contact with our sales force, they are more than happy. They are enhancing their relationship with us. So they are very much open to that. It's just the common sense. So we did not have any difficulties on the supplier side to convince them that this is the next step we need to work together. We did the same also with our purchasing community, because everybody understands in the what we call the unified network of purchasing. This is a purchasing community which is full of talent. We have 120 buyers worldwide, and the average age is 31 years old, and the seniority on average is 6 years. So we have very good talents and knowledgeable people. And what we have been explaining to them, and they are very clever, so they understand, this overall new step is going to make their job more impactful, go much beyond the bottom line, but also contributing to the top line. It makes your job even more interesting, more impactful in the company. So that's also something which is common sense, and this is very easy to accept. Then comes the time you talk to the executive people, which is very important. As executive people, of course, we need to understand that they are not the most clever people in the world, huh? So we need to have very simple explanation when we talk to them. I remember when I had this idea of asking our suppliers to become customers as well. I came to the CEO of the company and to some other presidents of our business units, what we call our maison, and I told one by one. I told them, look, you know what? This was in 2017 and 2018. I said, you know what? I think I have a stupid idea, and I would like to share it with you, and you tell me if it's really stupid or if you see some common sense behind. Can we sell bottles to our suppliers? And they all are buying bottles everywhere, so every year. So all of them said, it's obvious. We should have done that before. So why didn't we do it before? So again, each time when you move to this new generation step in purchasing, you show the common sense. This is just a logical step. And it is pretty much linked to these global technologies of connecting all markets together.
Dominique, you just highlight right now and in your speech previously in the global proximity approach that the buyer will move from managing supplier to managing ecosystem, which is quite different, and from bottom line focus to also sales contribution, even if they are not the new sellers, but they need to focus also on that. This is a huge, as you just mentioned, this is a huge challenge in terms of capabilities. Those change. Can you tell us if it changed the way that you recruit people, that you train people, that you develop your team?
Mm-hmm. Yes, very briefly. You will be surprised. You will be surprised, Christophe, how clever people can be. When you talk about common sense and when you talk about a vision, which is just a continuity of what happened in the past 40 years, the new term, you see, you just need to be clever. If your purchasing community, and that's the case today, we have been working for the past 30 years in building purchasing skills into business schools, into programs. Today, clearly, all the young students that are going out of those schools, masters, they all are very good people. They all are clever, and they are very much open to new ideas and new changes. So I would say, in terms of profile, I would say no. You don't need to have a different profile. You have the best talents today available in the market, and for tomorrow. What needs to be done is just communication. It's just showing some new ideas and putting those ideas into practice, and learn by working, by doing it. For instance, for all our buyers in purchasing community, what we decided to do is to give them, like everybody, and including myself, in our personal objectives every year, we have to come with one supplier activation opportunity. How to generate revenues with one supplier or with another one. That's something which is very much easy for them to understand and to apply. Then we did that by practicing. I remember when I was making that presentation to another audience of CPOs, and I remember I had one question, and that's why this business acumen vision is full of, it's plenty of good sense. I had one question. Someone, he was a CPO of a large company manufacturing equipment. He said, oh, I understand your point, but it's obvious that you can do that because you are manufacturing bottles, right, and spirits. In my company, we are manufacturing equipment, industrial equipment. How can I do to transform some of my suppliers into contributors to business? And my answer was very clear. I have no idea. And I don't know. You are in your business, not. The only thing that we all can do, and that's exactly what we have been sharing also with our purchasing community, with the buyers. The only thing that you can do is just think about it. Just keep that idea in mind. That's it. And don't forget to always keep that in mind. And you will see 1 month, 2 months later, one idea will come that you maybe you would not have seen it, you would not have observed it if you were not paying attention before. But one idea to transform, to utilize a supplier relationship to help our sales force. And then another one will come, another one. And you'll see everybody can have its own contribution to generate business.
Thank you. I think that, François, you have also some examples within Suez where you worked on not only bottom line, but also working on how can we impact the top line by selling with or generating revenue through suppliers. Can you give us some example around that?
Yeah, that's just about looking at things in a different way one more time. So back maybe now 10 years ago, when we launched the remote metering system, I mean, initially, you know, I mean, you had somebody coming every year just looking at your meter, and and just that was used just to bill you, and that was it. I mean, meter was just used just for billing perspective, and that was it. So then we come up with a new technology, which was remote metering, and guess what? You go from having one information a year to having the information every 15 minutes. So you can imagine how massive the change is. Okay, so what we did, we developed this technology with one supplier. Okay, so we co-invested with the supplier to develop the technology, make sure we were, because of course within Suez we didn't have all the digital knowledge, etc., etc. So that was a unique opportunity to team up with new players, new people coming with a new expertise into this business. And what we did, going beyond just co-developing a product, we as well thought about what type of new service we could bring to our customers. And second, how could we combine our sales strategy? Because of course, I mean, Suez is not everywhere. These players sometimes work directly with municipalities as well, just because, you know, I mean, some municipalities do the service themselves. So they talk to the same supplier to get the same equipment from them. And what we brainstorm with them, we said, okay, we are going to sell exclusively your product. But what you will do is that you will propose to the municipalities you work with to go beyond just a product and use Suez to supply the service that goes with the product. So just a new technology, new capabilities give you immense opportunities in terms of new business. And again, if we would have done that just by ourselves, I mean, looking for a product available on the market, none of that is available because technology is one, definitely, we needed the technology. But what was a key to me is that this new technology gave us the opportunity to look at the business in a different way. And not just in isolation, but like we said, with a network of people, because we have suppliers, but we talked as well to our customers. What type of service could we develop for you, etc., etc. And we built some pilots, and we developed a lot of new services. So again, the important point to me is don't consider supplier just as somebody delivering a technology, but look at the supplier for somebody looking at things in a different way and coming up to complement and develop your strategy much further. So that's exactly what we did. That opened up new business opportunities in terms of new customer and new services. So that's really the way we looked at it.
Excellent, Francois. Matteo, based on what we just heard, either regarding all the change management or change of mindset or regarding the topics I just highlighted, Francois, right now, do you have any remark or question for them?
Well, I would like to ask two questions, if it's possible, one for Dominic and one for Francois. Concerning the change of mentality, Dominic mentioned something which I would like to try to summarize as, don't ask yourself what your supplier can do for you, ask yourself what you can do for your supplier, which I found an interesting perspective that you gave us. And I would like to know how you did that, meaning how did you change internally the mentality of the organization, moving from us versus them towards us with them, which was something that you mentioned in your...
Yeah, thank you for that question, Matteo. Christophe just a little bit earlier was mentioning the notion of ecosystem. I think, like all transformation plan, we are driving transformation in our organizations. Transformation is communication, so we need to communicate. We need to it's not enough to have the right and good ideas. You need to have it at the right time, and you need to explain it and to share it. The way we opened the mindset of everyone and asked them to think different, we invited them to think not only in terms of managing a supplier relationship, supplier by supplier, but we invited them to manage ecosystems. A supplier is just one piece of an entire puzzle, which is the ecosystem. We have been limiting ourselves so much on most of the purchasing organizations worldwide, even in the most advanced purchasing organization, we have been limiting ourselves in supplier relationship management and developing our suppliers individually, one by one. The future is, as you said, Matteo, what can we do to change and what can we bring to our suppliers? There is an opportunity which I think hasn't been very explored in the future, is what I call the supplier collaboration. Stop working with your suppliers one by one and ask your suppliers to work together. Ask your suppliers to collaborate the one with the others, to help creating solutions to your business, to help reducing your supply chain, overall supply chain, to help providing sustainable initiatives and work together to find solutions. But we are, and again, these new technologies of communication are accelerating what we call the collective intelligence. We are all so much connected then collective intelligence is by far is much more than individual intelligence. And your suppliers are today, whether we like it or not, we are not encouraging them anything different than to work with you individually. We are not exploring enough the collective intelligence of our suppliers. It doesn't mean that we should ask our suppliers, competitors to work with each other. There are some limits to that concept, but you can have different suppliers from different markets, different industries, getting connected because they are all sharing the same issue, the same problem, and working together. So that's one way, by elevating the vision, by opening a new dimension in the supplier relationship, then it's one way to change the mindset, and people start to think, yes, maybe we should think different.
Thank you very much, Dominique. If I may try, if I would like also to ask a question to Francois. In his speech, you mentioned about smart meter, and I think that in your organization, digitalization is becoming ever more a topic. So I would like to know if it's possible for you to give us a hint to what you are doing, what you are planning to develop in using digitalization in your organization.
So when we talk about digitalization, we talk mainly about dynamic data management. That really is the way we look at it. And let me give you just a very simple example. So initially, Suez again delivering drinking water producing drinking water and delivering it. Initially, we had contract with municipalities, right? So we were dealing, our customer were the municipalities. So we have maybe 1,000 municipalities in France. So, okay, you deal with 1,000 customers, let's say. Then next step was to go to what we call subscriber, people having a meter at their place. So you jump from 1,000 to 4 million. And now with digitalization, we are talking about managing what we call the end user. When you have a group housing, you got 1 meter for maybe 100 of people, 100 of apartments, 100 of that. So we move now from 4 million to maybe 20, 30 million. So you see the amount of data that we have to manage in order to be able to deliver information, pertinent, right, dynamic information to these 10 million, 15 million of people. And that gives us unique opportunity to deliver service, not just to the municipalities, not just to the subscriber, but to the end user as well. So that's exactly how the business, and again, back to what I said earlier, technology move the opportunity or change the way you should be looking at the business. And that's exactly it. So now our challenge with digitalization is to be able to sell service, not to 1,000 customers, but to 15 million of customers. And this is really what we are talking about.
I have a question, Christophe, if you agree, for my dear fellows CPOs here. We are all having the same challenges. We need to drive changes in the organization, and we need to take the organization to the next level. I like very much the way you has been able to install and the new messages in your organization and drive those changes. This digitalization at Suez, Francois, is just great, and by far was clearly in advance what we can see today. And the fact, Matteo, that the way you bring back your suppliers close to operations, these are risky strategies, and we expose ourselves to do things different. So I'd like to ask you, to both of you, what was the main obstacles that you have? If you would pick one obstacle, one problem that you had to face, and the way you overcome it.
So maybe I go first. So the big obstacle or change that we have to manage, to me, is top management perspective on procurement. Okay, because of course, I mean, one of you mentioned that already. procurement, even if that was 30 years ago, procurement is still seen as bringing contribution to the bottom line. Okay, cost reduction, and cost reduction. So what was to me very inspiring and insightful was the opportunity, but you have to do it over and over, over again and over again. Every time there is a new manager joining the company or you have a change in management, you need to go back, is to tell people, don't look at a supplier just as an external body that we are going to get into a power struggle and what I call margin transfer from one company to another. Look at the supplier as an opportunity to create value in the value chain. Look at the supplier as somebody who has got capabilities to do some looking at the business in a different way, bringing innovation, bringing new ideas. Because when you said you have your own new ideas, I mean, most of my ideas come from suppliers. Supplier coming to us and say, have you thought about that? Why don't you do that? Because they have much more greater perspective on the market. Okay, they talk to a lot of people as well. So really, my obstacle, my challenge is to have the CEO of the company, the top guys of the company, being with us, being on board, and drive. That's why I ask you the question, is it a procurement initiative or is it a company initiative? We need to take that. I mean, the CEO needs to drive it. Of course, we will execute for him, but the CEO needs to drive it. The CEO needs to challenge his salespeople. Why don't you use your supplier to, like you explained? So CEO needs to challenge technology. Why are you talking to supplier once you have a good idea? Talk to the supplier before you have the good idea, because the supplier will bring all these ideas. So my real challenge, and is still the case today, I haven't won this one, is really to maintain an open dialogue with top management to make sure people are driving the change we are talking about.
Yeah, I perfectly agree with François' point. It's indeed the top management involvement and support is key. I would probably to add that the other difficulty that I see in some organization is being able to really translate what top management thinks procurement should do in what really procurement must do. So sometimes procurement is involved too late in key decisions. We've been talking, for example, about reshoring, and there are plenty of cases where having involved procurement in reshoring decision would have helped, would have solved a lot of problems before. And I think that still, as a mentality issue, is understanding that procurement people are not simply there to implement, but are there to help and support the organization in taking good decisions. And that's still, I'm not saying it's what happens in your organization, but I still think that happens in several organizations. And that is indeed another challenge that I believe should be tackled.
Thank you, Matteo. Thank you, François. Thank you, Dominique. I'm afraid it's time to close our roundtable. It was very inspiring for me, and I'm sure for other people that listen to this roundtable. Thank you so much. I don't know how we will manage to do a synthesis after this roundtable, but thank you so much. We had many other questions, but unfortunately, we are running out of time. So thanks again, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you to all of you. That was really an outstanding roundtable discussion. Christophe, do you have any kind of already kind of a short-term reactions to what you've been hearing during that discussion?
In fact, I've prepared a synthesis, but I'm not sure that it will cover at least 10% of everything that was said. So to do such a reaction or synthesis after so much comment is not an easy one. I think that was very... First, what was very positive and interesting is that whatever the industry of the background of our speakers, they all share the same vision around reshoring or supplier relocation. I think we are all agree on all the criteria that are pushing in this direction, market expectations, the footprint efficiency in terms of TCO, how to access to resource and capability. So why do we need to change? I think that we all agree on that. What was very interesting for me is the discussion around the execution, how to do that. And when Francois mentioned that it's a company initiative and not a procurement initiative, when we discussed so much about the change of mindset around the fact that we need to all agree, whatever, if we are sales, engineering, marketing, on a shared roadmap, that was very, very interesting. And I think that was also a very positive message for the young buyers right now. You know, they will enter in a procurement activity with so much challenge, not only in cost optimization, but also in value creation. We are discussing about value creation for years, but I think right now, all the examples that we had are very concrete and clear. I think that's very positive, not only for the company, but for the buyers, or the new buyers also. I don't know, Hervé, if it makes sense also based on all the analysis you made for your book, The Fifth Purchasing Generation.
C'est pas 55 là.
Yes, I think that's really a good spot on, because within our fifth generation purchasing book, we've got one of the work mode which is about collaboration and alliance, and the motto for this mode is I grow, you grow, we grow. And I think, you know, that's exactly a perfect tagline for this part of the conference. Now the question is how to get there. And I think I've got a few points I'd like to share with everybody now. The first point I think that's important is there is a practical path, you know, between conservatism, staying with doing, you know, keeping doing what we were doing in the past, and maybe some wild dreams we've been hearing about relocalizing, we're bringing back every activity to a certain place. And that path is very interesting because, yes, we can make a change. We can create some bold moves. Social and environmental progress are not economic burdens. If we really start to think in creative way, if we keep the mind open, we will find solutions that can tick all the boxes. It's the end. It's a collective effort. It's a collective mindset. And there are many ways we can start to spark the first steps of this journey. And here what's important is not just to have like proof of concept here and there, is really to have a beachhead strategy. So beachhead is really a military term. When you're approaching a new territory, what you need to do is to be able to find a piece of land when you can start with something. And you just go for it. You put all your resources, all your energy in making this first move happening. And from that, you can start showing around, convincing people, hey, we've been able to do it. Let's continue. Let's make some next move. Let's push things further. And I think we need more of these beachhead strategies, looking at where is it, where we can make a first move that we can use to tell the right stories around. The second element that I think is important is the power. I understand we've been looking much beyond the total cost perspective in the discussion, but this is still a very fundamental move. Whether we talk about environmental impact, whether we talk about bringing back the some of the suppliers more locally, all of this will happen if we're able to build together, you know, the right analysis in terms of cost. And I think that's really important. We do that together with people from the business. And now maybe to conclude on some of the last elements related to the top line and related to the ecosystem, I think it's fairly simple. You know, if we've got good suppliers who can deliver on time, on cost and delivery, that's not 100%. That's only 40% of the value we can get out of them. If we look at them as a set of capabilities that we can leverage for improving performance, for bringing innovation, it adds 30% to the equation. But that's still only 70%. You only get to the 100% potential if you start to look at them as a route to market and as a route to knowledge, as true market and knowledge partner that can open new opportunities for the company and for society at large. And when you achieve this 100% potential, you also increase the satisfaction from your buyers from this 40% to this 100%, because trust and impact is so meaningful for them. That's it. That's my conclusion. Bernard, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. It's time now for a coffee break, for some water, so kawa, cafecito, como quieres. We're going to get some 10 minutes break. Just being on time, we'll be back at 3:55. During this time, you can stay online. You can bring questions. We'll be replying, answering you back, whether online or we already answered some of your questions. In the coming days, we'll be answering back. So just 10 minutes break for a coffee. Take care of sunshine if you are still on day. Take your coffee, water, and we'll be back. We stay here. So if you want, you can stay online and you can discuss if we bringing some question we're answering. Take care of yourself. Be back.